Good morning. I was about to. I was gonna open Teal Draw and then made a Google search. Some cat products came up. Anyways, so we did a stream yesterday, and it was very nice. Learned a lot, and the whole point, the whole exploration for the last like months, I would say, is you have React on one side, and then on the far other side, let's see, let's make that like a hard stop. On the far other side, you have this thing we call mutable reactive state management. React state management. Oh my god, look at that. React state management, mutable reactive state management. Oh, that looks amazing. And in my head, I want these two to be kind of the two choices for me. Either we embrace React state management, or you go all the way and you kind of, it's not like there's so many things that this line represents. One thing is like, this is immutable, this is mutable. This is like component driven state management, while this is like, or how should I, UI driven state management, while this is like the, how should I put it? Yeah, not like you, but it's almost like here you have your UI and you put state management in it, but here you have state management and then a UI consumes it. Like, it's a very different way to think about building an app. Maybe we should write some of these these down. So you have like immutable. Let's make another color for this. So this is like immutable. This is mutable. Let's just call it reactive state management. And let's give this one a hard stop here as well. And this is like UI first. I want to call it UI first. Like, it's a mental model. And this is state first. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It's like even the routing represents that. Like, React router is like UI first type of routing, while you also have state first routing, where your URL or your navigation events comes into your state store and you manage it, and then the UI derives from it. Yeah, and then this is like UI state derived from UI, right? So you build your components, and as your components mount, you're building up your state, right? While here, it's the opposite. Here you have UI derived from state. Anyway, I think this is enough for now. The whole point is that there are these like two completely different ways to build an app. And I have a lot of experience doing this far side of the spectrum, because I've been working on like very complex applications, like client side, complex app feel kind of applications, where there was a lot of client side management, not that much like data management, but just the sheer amount of state and how it's being consumed across the UI, and a lot of complex asynchronous flows that doesn't lend itself well to be expressed in React, and so on and so on. But the whole problem, or the thing that's been on my mind is like, but React is like, you can have this mental model, right? The problem with React is that it's so fucking slow when you want to do something relatively complex. But that's about to change. So, oh, look at that. That was too big. So currently, like, React kind of stops. This is very scientific. Oh, what did I do? React kind of stops here, right? And then you have state management lib A, state management lib B, or A, and it's like, hello there, good morning, or good evening. So you have like state management lib A, state management lib B, state management lib C. So you have all of these libraries that's like just trying to, and they often have the same mental model, but it's like primarily just fixing like the performance issues of React. But now we're gonna get the React compiler, and from what I've seen, the React compiler is gonna be a huge deal. Oh my god, look at that. Can I move you, please? No. Oh, come on. There we go. The React compiler is going to be a huge deal. Oh, you have. What does that mean for you when you say that you started learning React state management? Have you, is it some libraries or doing it in React or? But we're getting the React compiler here. And this is going to be huge. I think that's my prediction. Because what's going to happen is that you're not going to choose these libraries for performance. Like none of these libraries. Well, that's the thing. I think you still need, for like the kinds of apps I've been working on, you still, like the compiler won't fix everything, right? So maybe you'll get up here somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, so you still need, so if you're actually going to build something immensely complex, you still want to have this reactive state management at the far edge. But now you can use React like to a much larger degree, like in terms of complexity. So I'm not saying that you don't need to use these libraries. Maybe you just like the APIs. Maybe you just like their mental model. Like it's, but the thing is that the performance argument is gone. That's the point. And to me, this helps a lot because now I can look and evaluate the application, and it's much easier for me to just say, no, like looking at the team, no, we're React developers. Let's just use React. We have the React compiler. It's going to be more than good enough for us to handle performance. And we don't have to use callback, use memoize components. We're going to be able to just write React code, right? So that's going to be amazing. And then if I see that, oh shit, this is going to be immensely complex, we need a reactive state management tool. And the most performant way to do that is to have like a mutable one. That's really why I wrote mutable. I'm going to write mutable reactive because it's the most performant one. Let's add that. Targeted reconciliation. And this one is waterfall reconciliation. Yes. So for me, so this is not about saying that all the state management libraries aren't worth it. It's just that for me personally, it becomes much, much simpler to think about what to embrace. Because what I've experienced is that in this range, like when you have a mix of React and an external state management, which isn't on the far edge, like which doesn't have that mental model of, okay, if you're going to go external from React, that's your actual application. While React is just this dumb view layer that's just going to consume your actual app, right? That's the kind of application mental models I've used for building complex applications. But when you're in between here, you're constantly like evaluating, like there's no clear separation of what is React and what is this other state management. Yeah. So to me, it's just simpler. It's a simpler world. Yeah, just doing it in React state variables with useState, just made a form and handled the submission. Congrats. Kind of beginning phase for my journey of coding. Yeah, React though is pretty rough starting place to learn programming. Because it has like it is a rough start, but you're also going to learn more about programming. So you have like Vue and Angular and so on, and they will make you, I want to argue, they're going to make you more productive, like creating actual end value, but you're going to learn less about the actual language and the runtime of the language. But the biggest like hurdle with React is that it has this reconciliation loop, which doesn't reflect how the language normally operates in the runtime. So yeah, like there's no silver bullet. You just have to dive into it, which you are doing, which is great. And as long as you have small wins, right? Something that kind of, oh, I made something work. As long as you have those moments, you're gonna just be perfectly fine. But yeah, React can be quite mind-bending, even for experienced developers, because of the behavior of the code. This reconciler makes things run a bit different than you intuitively might think. But maybe it's a blessing to not have that much experience with programming, because then you kind of just take it on face value and you don't question things. And then as you get more experience with the actual language, then you might start questioning things like, why does it work like this? How the hell does this work? How is this even possible? Kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's not about the code or the runtime or anything. It's about actually creating value for people. So yeah, where was I? Okay, cool. So this is the thing I'm thinking about. Oh yeah, trying to understand what is happening behind the hood rather than just coding. Oh, Python. Yeah, I don't have experience with Python. I read a little bit, like when the AI hype started. I think it would be the language I would gone to if I wasn't exposed to JavaScript. It seems, yeah, it's like having so much experience with JavaScript, Python feels quite intuitive to me. So there's some similarities. Yeah, because that's the thing about React is just the fact that you have like a very simple thing in React. Like you have component and you have state, right? Equals useState foo bar. Now, the thing is, just what's like exceptionally unintuitive about this is that if I have an on click here somewhere and I do like set state bar 2, whatever, and this runs, it runs the component again. And here you have foo bar. You don't have foo bar 2. And this literally runs. Like this useState behaved differently the first time you run it compared to the other times it's run, which is just insanely weird. That's not how you write code in any language, really. Because every time you call a function, you call it and it does the thing. But here the function, it works as like this. You have underlying state of the function, and then it's like, yeah, it's a very, what I mean to say is it looks just like a function, but it's not just a function. It's a stateful thing. There's a lot of stuff happening under the hood, underneath this function. Yeah, exactly. And that's the great thing about React, right? That you have this function that you can just use your JavaScript in it, and you're able to return the new version of the UI, and then React makes sure that happens optimally. Unlike other libraries where you have to learn like a templating language to achieve the same thing. So that's the good and the bad thing about React. It's the good thing that we just spoke of, like how you can just express UI, whatever you return is going to be updated optimally in the DOM. But then you have the state management for it, which is like internally, like local state management using uState. It makes sense. But as you start sharing state, you're going to experience some friction. That's for sure. Cool. I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna export it. And then we're gonna go in here and then we're gonna just look at what I wrote on this this library thing. So I'm just calling it like Mobx reactive. And the reason is really just because you have something called Mobx React, which is really like React bindings to Mobx. While here we are really, yeah, maybe I can just read it. So why Mobx reactive? Mobx at its core is a performant and flexible reactive system. It was originally introduced for classes, but as React has evolved, it is time to rethink how simple Mobx can be. With a single reactive primitive, transparent observation in components, and functional patterns for state management, it has never been simpler to handle complex and perform like that's such a pitch and performance state management in React applications. But that's the point here, is that Mobx has a lot of primitives, a lot of options, a lot of quirky ways to protect state changes with actions and flows and stuff like that. This doesn't have any of that. It just has this reactive primitive because it's all you need. And everything's transparent, right? There's no observation. There's no explicit defining of how to handle what's reactive, not reactive, what's a computer, what's not a computer, blah, blah, blah. So this piece of code actually runs. And then what I'm trying to express is really this line I talked about, like when would you actually choose something like this? As I mentioned, like this is when you're building something insanely complex, where React, even with a compiler, wouldn't be performant enough. And you really want to shift the mindset of your application isn't the UI first, and then your state is derived from how you build up your UI. It's the complete opposite. You have all your state, and then your UI derives from that state. So Mobx is a tool that derives from building large, complex single-page applications that needs to be highly optimized for app-like experience, interactions, application-level state management, and oh yeah, this is weirdly written. Anyways, mostly treating components as a DOM view. Explore the patterns that will help you build performant and complex state management in React applications. So what's really interesting though is one thing is like not choosing like set abstractions and like ways to like no stores, there's no reducers, there's no abstractions at all around this. It's just using the language. And then you just have these patterns that you use to handle different kinds of complexities with state management. And one thing that's very cool about this is that there are certain things that you can abstract, and there are certain things that just kind of fits better as patterns. So for example, yesterday we talked about how you can get into the situation when you're external from React to kind of fall into traditional patterns. So we had an example yesterday with Adam, where we talked about this generic data thing. Let's see. Where is it? Yeah. And there was this generic data, and then like traditionally what you would do is that you would, every time you open a device, looking at a device, you would kind of initialize the device data, right, in your state management. And that makes a lot of sense from that perspective. But when you, where did we go? But when the purpose of your state management is to expose a public interface to React, it's possible to do other things. So for example, here, instead of like every time a component opens a device, it goes in here and it calls init device data. What you can rather do is, where were we? Here, you can rather say get device data. And the difference is that when you render the device, you just go and get the device data as you're rendering the device. It's not like you open the device, then you have to like, in an effect, go and trigger the initialization of the data and blah, blah, blah. So what I mean to say is that there is like this mindset, there are parts to external state management that benefits React, but then there are certain traditional mindsets that could be better implemented with React. Or should I, how should I put it? So doing external state management enables certain things in React, but React also enables certain things in the state management. Like they are affecting each other. Even though we are keeping them separate, they are like affecting each other. And then it's just about like, okay, how do we get the most out of like the having external state management, and how do we get most out of that state management using it in React? So this is one thing. So you're lazily initializing data as you're opening components. And then you can also set up subscriptions to that data from your components, right? You don't have to set up the subscription in your state management first and then figure out, okay, yeah, I have a use effect, and when it unmounts, I'm gonna like clean something up or whatever. So your state can still be driven by UI in a sense. Yeah, maybe this is the wrong statement. State derived from UI. Like here you're forced to, like here your state is always derived from UI. And here UI is primarily derived from state, but you can also do both. Yeah, maybe this one isn't the best statement. Because you can have UI derived from, well, yeah, no, this is a bad way to express it. I guess it's more like, how should I express that? Yeah, no, we have to change that one. Anyways, so what's interesting about this is that something that hasn't been taken much advantage of yet, because I don't think we quite know yet the patterns for achieving it, is suspense. So if we look at this device data actually, like the data is actually there, right? Like the DTO of a device. It's just wrapped in this device data, generic data, device data thing. But what if it wasn't there? What if you had to go and fetch it, right? And you can still do that with the same pattern. So you could go here and actually fetch the device data and do it exactly the same. Because the only thing you have to change down here is to put use around it. So you do use store dot get device data props ID. And then as long as you have a suspense boundary around it, you'll be just fine. And that's something that's incredibly nice to have, which I think traditional external state management hasn't taken advantage of. You have things like React Query, which does do this, I believe, or maybe it's experimental still. But that is like within the scope of React, right? So it makes sense to do that. But yeah, this balance of like, when do you initialize your state? It can be a bit tricky. Like, it's finding the right mental model for things. But then you could like say, well, why don't you do this for like everything? Yeah, that's interesting. So like, just to take that all the way. So what if you have an app, and this app has some state, reactive. And maybe you have, or maybe just call it pages. So you have like a dashboard page, dashboard. But it starts out as null, right? All these pages starts out as null. And then you have, let's return those pages. And then you have like the actual app state. And then we have, yeah, I guess we can do, well, it depends. Yeah, pages makes things a bit more complex because the question is like, where do you do the routing? But what you can do is like get page, right? And then the page is, we don't have to do typing. You just do get page. And then you say return pages page equals pages page, or I'm gonna do it a bit more explicit. So if I have like the dashboard here, I can say return pages.dashboard equals or dashboard. The point is, we're just taking it even further. So yeah, let me do. Oh, why are you complaining? Hey. What's it complaining about? Oh, there we go. That was my laggy editor. Anyways, so the point is, what you do now, maybe you have like, what's it called? React router. And then you have defined a dashboard route. And then you just say get page dashboard. And you just render that. And now it lazily initializes. But when it's initialized, it will stay here as a page. So if you move to like the settings page, then it initializes that one. And you can move back to dashboard, but now it's there. So you don't have to initialize it again. It's like having a component-driven cache, I guess. But the whole point is that these things can also be promises, which is the really cool thing. And what's really cool about this is that, for example, if the dashboard has some subscriptions to data, you can just expose like a subscribe method to it. So whatever component that actually like uses the dashboard or gets the dashboard page will also subscribe to the dashboard, which fires up any subscriptions to data there. And then when you move away from the dashboard page, you stop those subscriptions. So it's like, it's a pattern of React driving the instantiation of state, like very much like what React already does, right? So if you have a component with some state, and based on that state, you mount another component, that component also has some state, right? And then when you go away from that, you change the upper state, and then the nested component is gone. That state is also gone. But here, you can choose that. You can keep it around. This is very interesting. I never... Yeah, it's like a... Yeah, it acts just like a use state. Exactly. But instead of keeping the instance inside the use state, you're keeping the instance inside your external state store. So it stays there, even if you navigate away. But if you navigate back, it's already there, and you can just continue from where you left off, if you choose to do so. And then you use subscriptions for any side effects. It's the same thing with the actual observation mechanism in the components. It's like, it always instantiates an observer, but it's only when the component like mounts and starts the subscription, it starts actually subscribing to those, to whatever state it accessed. So it's like, yeah, it's this pattern of, yeah, and it does simplify. It really does simplify a lot of things. It's just that we're so stuck in this. If I do a get page, we have this intuition that we're gonna get like a new one every time, right? And we think about caching as something you do with server data. Yeah, so you couldn't use it every time. Like, it depends on how you... so maybe we can take an example. So what if you didn't want the dashboard to be... yeah. So what you would rather do here is like, you wouldn't have like pages, right? You would just have... So I'm just using this for internal state. Sorry, this should be return app. Let's just call it state. So you would have like page, right? And then you would say, sorry, current page, return state page. So you would say state page equals state yeah, sorry, I would write this differently. So you would say if state.page.name equals name, something like that. You would just return state page or page or whatever. The point is, like, do you have a cache that just keeps everything, or do you have something that represents a single one And then, but then you can also say, but typically you would have an ID related to this, right? So if you had like a form for a specific item, or maybe we can take a form. Maybe you have a generic form, and for some reason you want to like, yeah, how would you do that? So you're moving away from the form. Well, I guess, well, you're just navigating away from the form. Well, you always have the possibility to do like, if you actually want to dispose of the form, you can do that on unmount. Well, can you do that? No, that's the whole problem. You can't, with strict mode, you can't safely do that. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah, I guess that's the trickiest thing. It's like, what if you want to actually dispose of something on unmount? You can't really do that in this pattern. Like you can unsubscribe so that it's not running side effects, but you can't really like completely remove it. But what I think you can rather do is like, for example, React Router, doesn't it have React Router, just as an example, docs, actions, what's actions? Yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking like, one thing is like trying to reset it when you go away from it, but you can also reset it when you open it, right? I just wonder if, for example, React Router has like on enter kind of thing. Well, no, that won't work. Well, you know what? Yeah, of course. Sorry. Yeah, so what you could do, of course, you could have. So let's imagine like you have some kind of form here. How should we do this? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess for a form, you would just have. Yeah, I'm over. It's not like a good use case for a form, I think, because the form could just have a reset method, right? So when you, when you're running, when you're actually running the form component and you're accessing the form, you can safely just like do a use effect, and on the disposer of the use effect, you can reset the form, right? And that's fine because that can run twice without like that's not like a side effect. So it just resets the form twice when you open the form, right? But another thing is like actual disposal of side effects. That needs to be subscription based. Well, this isn't like a side effect. This is just, yeah. Yup. Anyways, oh, where the hell should we go from here? Uh, So I didn't go through all. So I did update. I really want to work on the documentation, kind of put it in a more structured way. I added some like data reference, but what we can do, we can just like do a publish of this. Let's see. I just have to check my calendar. Calendar. Oh, nice. So what I want to do, I want to build this, and I want to like just publish like this hidden package. Mobx reactive. What did I call it? Single reactive primitive in React. That's a good one. Cool. Yeah, maybe with this, Adam, you can refactor all your classes. I thought about it. I think I dreamt about it. That you could like progressively change um that you could take, like you can easily combine this with classes, right? So you can take one in one class and suddenly you're classless. Like the joy of not having to use keywords, and especially that you can reference anything directly. You don't have to use the this keyword. And when you consume the state in components, you don't have to think about the this binding. You can always, like at any point in components or your state management, you can always directly reference functions and state and props and or params. It's a blessing. Cool. New package. Yeah, because I want to play with this in the Family Scrum app. That's what I want to do. So let's see how we would actually do it there. npm publish access public. Is that how you do it? And public access, yeah. Let's see. I can use my Seven three seven 695. Yeah, I want to try to just like, let's take this pattern and just like fully embrace it and just see what happens. Family Scrum. So I think we can still use this branch. Blup. That's my, what's it called? Working titles for commits. It's blip, blup, blippity, blippity bloop. Yeah. And then I alternate those. Yarn. Do we have yarn? Yeah, yarn and Mobx reactive. I'm not like super fond of that name, but it was available, so. Do, 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 do. I'm gonna remove Bonsify. The nice thing is that I don't have to think about like the reactive system. Like that's also something to add to the documentation. It's like Mobx is such a battle-tested, proven reactive system. What were we do? Yeah, and now we have to go into the Vite file because we're gonna use. Yes, thank you. Mobx reactive. There we go. Cool. So I have this state store Mobx reactive. It works. Okay, so let's think about the session first here. Yeah, so this is the first place we're gonna apply this. So currently I'm using the explicit states for the session management. But here you can see that we're actually firing up family scrum when we're authenticated. So I'm doing the init pattern. Maybe we should call that the init pattern. That's when your state management initializes all the other state. And we're gonna make a statement now. That's not a good idea with React. You should rather make React initialize the state and then subscribe to any side effects. I really like that because that's also a really like hassle management thing. Okay, so we're not gonna fire up family scrum here. Why aren't I getting authenticated? That's interesting. Oh yeah. Oh, why aren't? Oh yeah, I remember now. Sorry, I thought this would do strong typing, but it doesn't. You have to put it here. Like, oops, sorry. So there's no family scrum here. And now we don't need this disposer stuff either. This is interesting. Because now we're going to dispose with an unmount because we're going to stop subscribing to family scrum. Oh, this already, this feels correct. Okay. So we have all of that running and then, wait, user. Oh. So this is the user. It's just, well, a user. And then we have a family, I believe. Let's fix that as well. And we have like family members and stuff. This is just me taking the DTOs from Firebase and making them into more accessible state for the components. So let's go. Sorry, I'm still recovering from a cold. So in our session, oh, come on. So in our session now, we have all of this stuff, but I've been passing down family scrum, right? But now we're not going to do that. We're just going to pass down the session state. So in family scrum, we're going to get a session here and we're going to get the authenticated session. So we have our session. Yeah, the question now is, yeah, but maybe it's fine. Well, I guess the issue now is like, where do I put that? Oh, sorry. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, this is interesting because now, what doesn't quite make sense is because I'm using this, oh, this is interesting. Okay, so with this mindset, I'm gonna change things a little bit. So we're gonna have, so we're actually gonna have an index here, export function state. And then we're gonna have our state here. And this state is gonna have a session. Yeah, sorry. So this takes n, I think. Did we call it environment? N. There we go. And then we're gonna do a read-only version of that state. But then we're also gonna do function. What should we call it? Like get family scrum? Yeah, let's just call it that. Get family scrum, and then we're gonna pass it a session. Now, and the thing is, I I don't want to have mixed sessions here. So there should only be like a single session at any moment in time. By the way, I'm going to call this like app state or something. I don't know. What should we call this? Okay, I just need to start somewhere. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here, so we should only have a single family scrum. So we're gonna do return. Yeah, exactly. So this is get family scrum. Since it takes the session, that makes sense to me. What is this actually missing? Oh yeah, it has the dispose thing, but now we don't need the dispose thing. Let's remove that. That's it. We're gonna like, what's it called? Review this. I just have to write some code to think. But the point is that we, like a family scrum instance is tied to the user ID, right? And the point is that I don't want to keep multiple sessions here, but I do want to keep the family scrum instance tied to, I guess, the user ID or the session for that matter. Yeah, it's a little bit weird because I only want a single session. Okay, let's call it family scrum. This is weird. Like if it was like devices, it would be much more intuitive because every device has like an ID and you just want to cache it. But here it's like, how would you best express this? Like I could have a map where the key is a session, but as I said, like we don't want multiple sessions. We just want one session. Well, yeah, and you wouldn't necessarily have to pass in the session here. Yeah, but I feel like I'm jumping hoops here. I do. Well, kind of not, but it's just like it makes sense to me. It's just that it's caching is like we're basically caching, and yeah, because I think that's the thing that feels different here. It's like when you do initialization, that's what you do. You move into the state, initialize something. But now we're not doing that. We are like just caching something. And it's just a very different way of thinking about it. And even though we have like great primitives for caching like resources, like just use a record, right? And every key is the ID, and then you have the actual resource. But when you want to cache one single thing, and we could cache it on like user ID, that would be fine. But how do you express that? Like, how do you say, do you use like a tuple for it? Like, but that's also weird, right? But yeah, I guess you could say like use, or yeah. So I could say null and then like user ID string. If family scrum user ID equals session user ID. And if not, we're going to create a new one. Well, I think we're going to use session actually. Oh, sorry. Authenticated. Did I call it session? I did? Where are you complaining? Oh, sorry. Oh. Why is this failing? Oh, it... Excuse me. Yeah, I guess we can do this. Yeah, I mean, we can do... So if family scrum is not equal to session, we're going to say... And then we can say family scrum, family scrum. It's a little bit weird. Like you just saw, I had no intuition for this. But we are literally doing the same thing. We're binding a reference to an instance. And instead of when you're authenticated, we instantiate the instance. We're rather allowing React to just say, hey, I want this instance related to this reference. In this case, it's a session. And then we create that entity if it doesn't exist. So it's React that's actually instantiating this. But yeah, I've typically done this with, as I said, resources, and you just use a map and you have an ID, right? But now we just have a single. Yeah, it's like a single entry map. Yeah, but I can even like say app here or something and just say get app or whatever. And then maybe it will make more sense. But the point is, let's just move on from here. This is something to reflect on. So we have, oh, sorry, get app. And we're going to do export type, state, return type, type of state. Look at me. And then where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Session, there you are. So what we would do here is we'll pass it to app. Or sorry, family scrum. We would still do that, but we would get it from. Oh yeah, sorry. Oh, I don't really have. Sorry. Oh, come on. These refactors are really killing me. Let's see. So we're passing the state into session. Oh, it's still. Sorry. Let me just grab the session from there, state.session. And then we're going to say state get app. Session, sorry. Session.state. Get app returns. Oh yeah, and we changed this, right? Let's keep family scrum here. Oh, I'm not exporting it. Yeah, so this is, yeah, sorry. This is the reason I had this state thing. Let's just do. Just to get something rolling. Yeah. Let's evaluate. So it makes a lot of sense to me. The concept of letting React instantiate state makes a lot of sense, especially with suspense, because you can instantiate state asynchronously. And then when this state is initialized, it won't have any side effects. So you can't do anything. It can just like it can only like construct itself, but then you'll have a subscribe method that React can use to do whatever you need to do. Like for a counter, you wouldn't start the interval when you construct a counter. You would do it on the subscribe, for example. And this makes a lot of sense for like resources. That's like a given. That's very simple, straightforward. But then we got into this, let's see, where did I put it? Index. We got into this like, okay, but what if I have this session now and I'm authenticated? How do I... Yeah, it just felt... It just felt weird because I'm basically doing the same. I'm taking the authenticated state and I'm like setting up the app or setting up family scrum. So why not just do it there? But maybe that's the difference, right? Maybe this is more a pattern of resources. Maybe. It just feels a little bit weird. The one thing I did notice, so I'm gonna revert some of this. I'm gonna, not that one. Yeah, I'm gonna revert this one. How do I do that? Oh, isn't it Git? Sorry, I thought it was the Git list. Discard changes. Yeah, I'm gonna discard most of this. Family Scrum and session. Discard. Okay, and then let's move back into. Oh, that one. I want to discard that one as well. There we go. So we still have family Scrum here now. The only thing I'm gonna do, because it is bound to the session. That's the thing. It's like it's bound to the session, so you might as well just create it, right? So I think that was a little bit weird. But what's interesting is that when I do this, I set up like this family persistence stuff. Do I actually do it here? Yeah. So what's interesting about this is now I'm firing up a bunch of, you see this? I have this on disposed thing, but we're not gonna have that. Let's see. Disposers. No disposers. Because what we're gonna do instead, which I think maybe will be the takeaway from this. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, on dispose. So let's look at groceries. Groceries. So, and oh, what's this? And this is not gonna have an on dispose. What it's rather gonna have is, it's gonna have subscribe. Oh, oops. And then subscribe. We're gonna do this. So you can think about like every encapsulation of state as it's kind of like a store, right? Yeah, but then no, that's fine. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Let's see. And then in actual family, in family Scrum, Oh yeah, that's it. This one, I want to reset this one as well. Session. No, did I do the wrong one? No, what happened here? Import state. But why is this? That's weird. There we go. Sorry. And then. And here we have family scrum running. And here we can say, oh, I want to do a use effect here. And I want to say family scrum groceries subscribe. Like so. Now the point is, now I can choose, right? I want to subscribe to the groceries at the top. And I can subscribe to like every piece of data here. So I'm firing up the side effects here. And when this family scrum component unmounts, it's going to unsubscribe to all this data, which means that if the session is like gotten rid of because you're like unauthenticated or whatever it is, all the subscriptions are going down as well. So what we're really exploring here is like, we're partly exploring like caching entities or resources, but we're also exploring like dealing with side effects. And in this case, it didn't make sense to me. Like when you're authenticated, you get your instance of family scrum, right? Do, 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 do. Yeah. But if I was listing a bunch of to-dos, for example, so there's like a to-dos, there's something called edit to-do here. Do I have that? No, I don't have that yet. So you can edit a to-do. There I would do like a get to-do kind of thing based on the ID from the URL, and it would go and fetch that to-do, so I could actually edit it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's the conclusion, at least for now. It's like, because you're using React, right? You don't wanna start. Yeah, it's kind of hard to put into words. I think this would have been simpler if, like, if I got the session here, right? Instead, state authenticated. If I actually got the session here, sorry, and then I would actually do like family scrum equals session, like get family scrum. Or like create family scrum or something. The problem with create, that, like, this is the thing about React, right? Because you have the reconciler. So yeah, I wonder what would like best But at the same time, there's no reason to not have it here. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna reflect on this a bit. But the point is that this is a good thing to not like managing. Like I was managing like this disposing stuff inside my state management, but now I'm taking advantage of us exposing state to React, and I'm rather exposing the ability to subscribe to any side effects from the state. And that will automatically dispose of itself when family scrum unmounts, which happens when you unauthenticate in this case or sign out. And then it's fine to just remove the family scrum session instance because there aren't any side effects there anymore. Yes, I guess we're not like totally rid of there is also an argument for just managing this in your state management. There's such a never-ending story. But I do like the idea. I do like the concept. Just bluntly say never start a side effect when you construct your state. Create a subscribe method and then let the component that's going to consume this start a side effect and then also stop the side effect when the component unmounts. But then there is another challenge. It's like, what if you're consuming so for example, the device thing. What if you're consuming the same device to different places? Well, it's not a problem, but a subscription isn't necessarily a single subscription, which is a good thing. But you would have to manage that, right? What if you have an interval, for example? That's a good example. And then you subscribe to a counter, but something else might also subscribe to that counter. So now you have two subscribers to the counter, and you don't want to stop the interval on the first unsubscription, right? It's when you don't have any more subscribers, you want to stop the interval. So that's something you have to manage. While if you handle this inside your state management, that interval would just be running and running and running. What if that is what you want, right? You want that side effect to keep running, even though there aren't any components like showing anything. That's also an interesting thing. Yeah. Hmm. No, I think I have to get some stuff done. Yeah, but it's this tension between state management and UI. Who drives what? Does your state management drive the UI, or does the UI drive the state management? It's fine in React because it's just there's only one thing that can happen. But when you use external state management, you have to make decisions on that. And making decisions is costly. Yeah, whatever. Sorry. I started staring at the screen. We're gonna leave it at that. Reflect a bit, and then definitely the disposing thing. It's gonna go into, there already is like a disposing pattern which is based on state management, but this should rather be what I talked about. You create a subscriber or a subscribe method, and then components are deciding when these side effects should run or not. And then that just ensures that when you do choose to clean up any state, you know that there aren't any side effects running. And then there's a definite pattern of like handling resources, something that has like IDs, where you don't instantiate it. Yeah. On the fly, you you do instantiate it on the fly. That makes a shit ton of sense to me. And that leaves us with like the other state, which is like, as you saw, like the session leads to an authenticated session. But there's something about that that makes me think, yeah. Wait, where did I go? Family Scrum. There's something about that that feels more natural, that I kind of go in here and I say, like, use Family Scrum or something. And then I pass in the session. There's something about separating that. That makes a lot of sense to me. Because then there's something about this. I think if Adam is still here, we talked about this. How can you safely make React? Yeah, so maybe that is better. So we don't even have session here. And then this environment thing. Yeah. So, oh, sorry, not that session, but this session. So you would rather say const session equals use reactive session. So you're like creating that. Yeah, and you can even do like session, but sorry. Yeah, sorry. So this would be state session. Because we have a pattern now for not firing side effects as you instantiate, it means that you can safely set up these things in your components. And also you don't have to use sync external store because we're using mutable observable references, so it's safe to just subscribe on use effect. Yeah. I wonder how it would handle the environment thing though. Because here you will kind of have to do this, and then you would have to get like use environment, use env or something. So you kind of expose the environment on the context instead, which is fine. Which is just another pattern that you can just use in React regardless. And again, okay, so let's look at session. Okay, this is interesting. So let's imagine we do this, and then in session, we are setting, but here you see we have authentication unchanged, but we shouldn't have that. We should have subscribe here. So we have subscribe. Sorry, this returns void. Session. Wait, what didn't you complain to me now? Why isn't it complaining? Oh. That's why I'm not complaining. So what we would do here, subscribe, return, subscribe. And now, yeah, there is no on dispose here. Oh, didn't I remove that? Oh, did I do the wrong thing? There we go. Okay, we don't have any family scrum here. Like doing these refactors is quite rough because we're like setting one mental model and we're like shifting it. And yeah, it's just a little bit rough. So I can completely understand if you're finding confusing. So the point here is that we're using this reactive to create the session. And then we subscribe to it. And this is the thing that's like listening to the actual session. Yeah, what's interesting here though is like subscriptions are tricky because we have like the initial data here and then we subscribe to it. But that means that there might be an event between you initializing the state and getting the subscription started. So the state might have changed in between there. But for Mobx, that's fine. As I mentioned, like the component is already observing the state. But it could be like if you fetched something from the server and you wanted to subscribe. This is a challenge. Like subscribing to something on the server. It's like if you fetch it first and then you subscribe to it, it might already have changed. So you really need this concept of a snapshot to like, okay, which version do I have when I started this subscription, so that if you're already behind on your subscription on your version, you'll immediately get an event. And that's something to keep in mind with subscriptions. But yeah, I like this because it simplifies the state store. First of all, it like decouples your state management, so you don't have to build up this like state tree. You just have these like highly performant pieces of state management, and then you can use them, and by doing this hook based thing, you're also stating that you should pass it down as props, which is a good thing. You keep your state contract with the components. So this will be session Another thing is that it's decoupled, which I already talked about. And what else? What else? Yeah, I mentioned that cleaning up the state management. It also leans into the mental model of React, like driving the state forward. It's just driving state that's way more performant. Yeah. And like if you were just using React, right, you would do use session here and you would do use state and whatever. And that, so it would look exactly the same. It's just that you use a reactive store instead of like your own personal hook. Yeah, so they're much closer together. Well, one thing though is no, but that's good because then no, yeah, no, it's good. Okay, I think we should explore that. I think we should explore that. Because for example, with groceries, I wouldn't have use reactive groceries, right? And this is the thing. This is the thing that React doesn't support. If I were to use, okay, this is a very good example. So I have family Scrum, right? And what's amazing about this is that I can create a family Scrum state store that has nested stores in it. And now I pass family Scrum down to these different components, which means that like groceries is not going to unmount when groceries unmount, right? Kind of like React as well, but doing these more complex state stores that has like nested state, it's much easier to express using like a more of an external state store kind of concept or reactive state management. Because then I can also do things like if I want to open a specific to do, I can go in and I can do like get to do based on ID. It can be a promise, blah, 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 blah. And all of that stuff doesn't make is more difficult to express in a hook. Yeah, no, but it's gonna be interesting. Huh, 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 huh. Yeah, no, we have to reflect on this. I have to do other stuff. Bye for now.